I don't know what the Genshin team is on recently, but Fontaine has been nothing but peak. You have an amazing story, real cat girls, and a bratty Archon who you can't help but love, regardless of how much you want to punch her in her smug little face. And to be honest, it's gonna be hard to not like her going forward, because she's the best damn character in Genshin Impact. I know I make a lot of cringe jokes, but while Furina is kinda cringe, in no way is this a joke. She is absolutely a game changer, and if you want to never have to think when you play this game again, watch this video, pull her, build her, and invest in Xiangling. If you enjoy these types of videos, make sure to like it so YouTube knows it doesn't suck, and subscribe to the channel for more scuffed videos. My name is Braxophone, and let's talk about Furina. You know, when this character released, I was really hoping we'd have a Seela XP, but instead we just got schizophrenia. If you looked at her kit at all, your brain probably just completely turned off like mine. For me, this is only Tuesday. So don't bother reading unless you want the very, very specific details, and just let me explain everything. The whole Numa and Ozha mechanic is just a spicy way of saying you need to buy new characters because your other ones are too old, but if you get Furina, you don't need any more Fontaine characters. Ever. She's the only one you need and will ever pay attention to again. She has a bit of everything in her kit, including both Numa and Ozha, and I still have no idea what either of them do or how to pronounce them. By using her charged attack, she can switch between the two, and her normal attacks are just Furina normal attacks. But switching between the two isn't just for that extra attack. When you use her elemental skill in Ozha form, she summons a bubbly seahorse I'm gonna call Dante, a pretty crab, and Usher. These three summons all attack on their own, similar to Fischl's Oz. In fact, at this point, I'm pretty sure Fischl was just a beta test for Furina's kit and personality. All of Furina's summons have different attack speeds and thus apply Hydro differently, and all of them scale on her HP. They also move around on their own to attack enemies, so they're fairly inconsistent, and each one will have a different attack too. With the pretty crab, you get slow attacks with a big AoE, with Dante you get faster single target attacks, and with Usher you get a bit of everything. Something to keep in mind is that her Ozha summons also dish out a ton of damage. You can see higher damage in total than Yelan's, especially considering opportunities for AoE. This is mostly because they get a damage bonus when you have characters above 50% HP, and the bonus is multiplicative based on the amount of units that fulfill that requirement. But while they're out, they will all slowly drain your HP, adding up to roughly 50% of your whole party's HP throughout the skill. Over the 30 seconds of her elemental skill, you can expect about 6 to 7 elemental particles to be generated by all the little guys. Now, on the other side of things, her Numa skill is
useless.
Unless you're like a giga casual overworld only get home from school or a day at work and sit down at your PS5 for an hour with a bag of chips and repeat 5 days a week doesn't consume YouTube guide content type player, in which case even Numa is kind of nice. Numa summons a little Oceanid that heals your active character over time. Now the problem is that you lose your damage and particle generation in the Numa state, and the heals only work on your active character, so even though the number is high, it's not really worth giving up all of those other things just for a subpar healer. It's one of those things you can do, but if you do it, you hate damage, and I'm writing a twit longer about you. And lastly, for her skill, Genshin Impact finally decided to just straight up power creep Kokomi, and Jesus Christ is now canon in Genshin Impact. What really sets Furina apart isn't her being the first character with a personality in Genshin Impact, or the fact that she's the key to crushing all content in Fontaine, but the fact that her burst is just so damn strong. It's called Let the People Rejoice, which is fitting because the entire Genshin community is going to be talking about this character for the rest of eternity. When she activates it, she deals damage based on her max HP and gives your team absolutely absurd bonuses. During the 18 seconds that it's active, you gain fanfare stacks based on percentage HP gain and loss. It's pretty easy to get high fanfare stacks, and at talent level 10, you can get up to a maximum of 75% damage bonus with max fanfare stacks at C0. For context, someone's high investment Kazuha may give you around 40% elemental damage bonus based on elements swirled, and Furina's buff is dynamic and team-wide all damage bonus, meaning that your off-field characters that would normally snapshot like Xiangling, Fischl, Albedo, and tons more can get that damage bonus. Do you know how many fanfare stacks you have? Well, you'll just have to guess because for some reason we don't have a buff counter in this game, but you do have these little guys that'll show up on the corner of your screen as you get more stacks. Now with that said, you won't have max stacks the entire time, and in some teams you may even struggle to get max stacks, but considering how much her skill drains your team's HP, even an average player will be able to get a lot of that buff up during most of of its uses in the right teams and setups. It also increases incoming healing, which can get you extra stacks of fanfare. I'll talk about how to take advantage of this the most in my team section, but this kit section is like way too long and I want to move on. Her burst has a 15-second cooldown and costs 60 energy, and as one of the strongest abilities in the game, you'll aim to use it as often as you can, usually once every 15 to 24 seconds depending on the rotation of your team. With Furina's first passive, you can make it so that any healing that's over your active character's HP cap triggers Furina to give a tiny bit of healing to your party members. It's honestly not a ton, but it is a nice quality of life thing, especially for something like Rift Wolves. Her second passive is just more skill damage and healing based off her max HP, which is pretty good. Furina is one of the strongest supports we've seen since Yelan, Kazuha, and Nahida. And the best way I can describe her is that she's a unit that works with every older meta team, but also enables every newer meta team. Furina can also enable Marachasi Hunter on every character, meaning that if you have her, you only need to farm 1 or 2 artifact sets for all of your DPS characters going forward. She also doesn't require basic attacks for her Hydro application, which is pretty close to Yelan's, of course with the exception of some RNG from her summons, and she also summons Usher. She also trivializes Fontaine's main mechanic Numa and Usha by having access to both. I'll go more in depth in the team section, but in my opinion you should absolutely pick up Furina. Whether you're a new player or an old player, this character is a game changer and friendly to casual and hardcore players. After you pick her up, make sure to level her skill and burst. You can leave her basic attacks, but both her skill and burst are super valuable to the point where you may even want to crown her burst. Builds are honestly kinda boring and the same these days, but Furina, as usual, is changing the game and serving for us. For the first time in a long time, we have a character that isn't the same build as every other character in the game. We've seen changes to sands, pieces, HP, attack percent, energy recharge, defense, elemental mastery, but it's rare when other stats change. But Furina isn't like the other girls. We have a lot of new characters that want to use the Marachasi Hunter set, and so far Golden Troop has been without a perfect pairing. But now that Furina is out of jail, well, actually, I guess that depends. Golden Troop finally has its user. It gives a huge skill damage bonus on the 2-piece, and on the 4-piece, actually, do you want to take a guess? And if there's anything Furina wants, it's for Mrs. Krabs, Dante, and Usher to deal more damage. I hope you're ready for retirement, because now that you have Furina, you're never leaving this place. Ever again. You can also mix 2 pieces of skill damage, hydro damage, and HP percent, or go for Tenacity of the Millilith if you're still living in 2021. But 4 pieces of Golden Troop are going to be the best option for her. For main stats, you're going to want Energy Recharge or HP Sands, an HP or Hydro Damage Goblet, and a Crit Circlet. Because Furina's burst is so strong, you don't want to run into energy issues with her, and what that means is that you'll need to have a high enough ER stat to burst almost on cooldown. To be safe in solo Hydro Furina scenarios, you'll want between 200 and 220% energy recharge, but with another Hydro character, I'd recommend going for close to 150%. And if you play Favonius weapons on your other characters, ER requirements can go even lower. If you want to look at specifics, here's a table showing some different scenarios for energy requirements. Basically, if you run double Hydro, you can usually skip ER Sands or skip ER Weapon, but in solo Hydro, you'll likely need both. As for her Goblet, the reason you'll likely go with HP is 1, Furina has so much damage bonus from her kit and Golden Troop that HP can actually scale a bit better due to diminishing returns, and 2, the odds of you getting an HP main stat Goblet with better substats are much higher than finding a Hydro Goblet. For Circlet, try to get a balanced 1-to-2 ratio of crit rate to crit damage. Then for substats, prioritize ER as needed, and then go for crit and HP. I farmed for this using 60 Fragile Resin, and I've forgotten what year it is and how to spell my own name, but here's what a finalized build looks like. Stats can always be improved, but this is the right set and main stats. Welcome to my very normal weapons section for Furina. Expect this section to be very normal. There's nothing weird about it, at all. You might think that Furina's signature weapon is her best weapon, and you're right, on paper. But personally, I don't recommend pulling for it unless you have money to burn. Specifically because the banner it's on has a 50% chance after the 75-25 to just not give you a 5-star weapon. It does have the coolest animation in the game though. Look at that drip. Get it? Because it's water. The weapon is made of water. It's a crit main stat weapon that gives damage bonus and HP, and it's honestly amazing, but do keep in mind that ER is still important. I do account reviews on my Twitch sometimes, and I've seen players run Yelan with their signature bow with nowhere near enough energy recharge to get her burst up regularly, so overall they end up losing damage and not being able to actually burst with that shiny weapon they have. That effect isn't as big of a deal on Furina since her skill is already strong on its own, but I still recommend that you make sure you have enough ER to burst with her regularly. quickly. With this weapon, you may find that you need an ER stance for her. Her next best option is Jade Gutter, which gives HP and crit rate. I don't really know what else to say about it, it's been busted from day one. Other than that, if you're a veteran player, Festering Desire at R5 is going to be her best 4-star option for the skill damage, crit rate on skill, and ER main stat. You can also play her with Key, but literally who has that weapon? It's so ugly. If you don't have any 5 stars or Festering Desire, you can give your Bourgeoisie Archon the pipe or the Battle Pass sword. If you have the Dockhand's Assistant for some reason, that's also okay, and if you don't have any of these available, you can use Harbinger of Dawn, but I wouldn't recommend it since it's hard to keep the passive up the whole time unless you're in specific teams. I definitely recommend fishing for the pipe for her if you're free to play. So here's a weapon comparison. As usual, take these things with a grain of salt since they can depend on the team you're in, but it should give you a general idea of her best weapons. Oh, also if you're wondering, you can use Sacrificial Sword for the ER stat, but because she doesn't generate any particles on the actual cast of her skill, it's not really worth it. If you're doing that, you might as well run Favonia's Sword, which is also really good on her. Furina has some of the most teams available to her of any character in the game. Similar to other Hydro characters that are top tier, like Yelan and Xingqiu, she can be slotted into most teams and it's an upgrade. But the thing that she has over them is that she also has some extra supporting capabilities, like her damage bonus that she gives your team. Because she has so many teams, I'm not going to be able to fit all of them into this video. I'm going to try to speedrun this and go as fast as possible, but please bear with me. First off, here are some supports that she works extremely well with. The thing is, you get a ton more fanfare stacks when you have AoE healing on your team as opposed to just active character healing, because the more characters that are getting a percentage increase in their HP, the more fanfare stacks you're going to be able to get on burst. And for this reason, Furina is a massive buff to Jean. Jean is a character that has always been pretty good, but she was overshadowed by other Animo characters because if you could find a healer in another category, you could use someone like Cosmo, who gives you a big damage bonus on top of the Viridescent Shred. But now the damage bonus you get from Furina is going to be a little bit more significant, and you can still have that defense shred with Jean. Jean has basically received a massive upgrade with the release of Furina, and then other characters that have full team healing, that's going to be Kokomi in her burst, it's going to be Barbara's burst, it's going to be Chi-Chi as well. These characters all can help you get fanfare stacks more quickly. I'm not saying you have to play with these characters, but in general, healers got buffed and full team healers got buffed even more. So as I mentioned, she has a ton of teams, and you can basically use her in old or new stuff. So let's start with the old. If you look at national team, you can actually run Furina instead of your Viridescent Shredder. Now, the reason I still am running Xingqiu here is because Xiangling applies so much pyro that in order to get all of her hits to vape still, Furina may not be consistent enough. Her elemental skill kind of has random targeting, and that can make it a little bit difficult to get consistent hydro application. Like I said, this is sort of like Yelan if Yelan had a little bit of RNG to whether or not she's actually going to apply hydro. But because her damage bonus applies to the whole party and it's dynamic, even characters that snapshot like Xiangling can get the damage buff, and Xiangling and Xingqiu can both take advantage of it, and Furina is also going to be taking advantage of it as well. So you can replace Xingqiu if you want to with Furina, but this team benefits a lot from having all of them. So, do with that information what you will. So you can replace Xingqiu if you want to in this team, and that's totally fine, but I've preferred playing this version, especially because Xingqiu will help battery Furina a little bit. So another team you can run is going to be Hyperbloom, obviously. Furina is going to apply a lot of hydro. Kuki and Yao Yao are both healers that can get you more fanfare stacks. Now you don't have to use both of them. You could use a different Dendro instead. I just chose Yao Yao because we already have a 5-star here and another 5-star here, and I just wanted to have some 4-star options. But like, for example, Nahita's also fine here. I'll hate them, Kuki, and honestly, if you wanted to, you could play Sino here. Now, Baiju, Furina, and Sino are all kind of like a perfect combination for each other. Furina's such solid uptime, and Sino in a quick bloom team can be very, very effective. Not to mention that if you wanted to go Nahita instead of Beto, this is actually super strong because all of these characters can sort of use Sino's full duration. Moving on, this one is a certified classic. This is going to be Taser, Official Beto, Furina, Sucrose, you know the whole deal. If you want to, you can replace Beto with another character like Yelan or Xingqiu, and that's totally fine. But as you can see, she can be slotted into older teams and still be extremely effective. Now, this next team may surprise you, and this is one of my favorite things about her. This is absolutely insane. Furina makes Noelle like really good. I was shocked that this worked so well, but because Noelle has such wide sweeping AoE attacks and Furina's damage bonus is so big, you can end up dealing a lot more damage with Albedo and Noelle together, and then playing them with Goro obviously for the defense buffs. This team is crazy. Noelle does a ton of healing, which helps you get fanfare stacks incredibly fast. And if you have C6 Noelle, this team can be absolutely crazy. If you don't have C6 Noelle, it's going to be a little bit tougher, but even then, Furina makes this team way stronger. Now, another team I want to talk about is Actually, I don't really want to talk about this one. Okay, wait, I have one thing to say. You can actually play Charlotte here instead of Mika, and that's actually pretty good. I find Mika to actually be a pretty okay combo for Eula, but Charlotte is also really good here, and that's all I'm gonna say. You've heard of double hydro, and you've probably even heard of triple hydro now that Furina's out, but have you heard of quadruple hydro? Or I guess this would just be mono hydro. Kokomi has AoE healing. You're not gonna have any battery issues with this team. The amount of damage you're getting from Yelan and Xingqiu and Furina is going to be insane. Kokomi's on-field damage is gonna be pretty good with Furina's buff as well, and you're gonna get healing and fanfare stacks. This team shreds through enemies. It's absolutely crazy. And then here's a funny little team. Wow, very cool. This is like a Hu Tao Vape Burgeon team, and it's actually like really good. I was surprised at how good this team felt to play. The only downside is when I played it in my run, I didn't have like any EM on Hu Tao, so like my vapes and my Burgeons were pretty weak. I was using Dragon's Bane, but that was the only EM that I had. But I guess that is something. Hu Tao mains are probably gonna nail me to a cross for this one, so I have to talk about Bennett. You can use Bennett here, and Bennett's like technically on paper better than Baizhu for this specific situation. But Baizhu is more fun, and I want more excuses to play the sickly old man with a snake. And then lastly, Furina was a massive buff to Jean and a massive buff to Neuvillette. Neuvillette is a character that was already super good on release. Like, this guy already did so much damage, but if you play Furina and Neuvillette together, this guy can clear rooms with so much ease. He's one of the easiest characters to play in the entire game for the highest damage output, and with Furina, it's even higher damage output, and then also having the 2 Hydro characters will help with particles a little bit too. And with Jean on the team, you get fanfare stacks very quick, and with Zhongli, I guess you just don't have to worry as much about getting knocked down, and you get a little bit of shred with it shield, so that's kind of nice as well. But Zhongli is a little bit flexible. You could likely play Dia here as well, and it would be okay. There's also some opportunities to play some newer characters like Wriothesley here. Ultimately, Furina is one of the most flexible characters in the game. She can be played with old teams, she can be played with new teams, and she really is just a top tier unit. Also, the fact that she can enable Maratasiana on any character is just fantastic for team building as well. So thank you, Furina, for literally making this game so much more fun. Dude, I was going about my day as usual, just ready to make the Constellations section of this video, and I read the C1, and what the fuck? I'm staying C0 because I'm broke, but if you're single with like a middle class salary, then make your dreams come true, I guess. This is insane. Whenever user bursts, she gains 150 fanfare by default. That's instant damage bonus right off the bat, and you get the maximum limit increased by 100. So basically, you can have a much higher damage bonus coming from Furina just with C1. It's actually crazy. What's up, guys? Post-wallet clarity, Brax here. Just as a heads up, I may have overhyped C1 a little bit. This is something that I can't personally test, but it does look like C2 is going to be significantly more gains than C1, even though C1 does effectively increase your buff cap and make it easier for you to reach that ceiling. This is one of those things that you can calc, but it's going to be a lot easier to see how it feels in practice. Anyways, back to the video. C2 is also pretty crazy though. Basically, her fanfare gain increases by another 250%, and with C1, these two constellations together are basically going to make it so you can always get that damage bonus to be maxed out in an overwhelming majority of teams. So C1 is insane. C2 makes C1 even more attainable and more insane, and it increases Furina's max HP based on fanfare above the initial limit. So overall, these two are super crazy. C3 is going to be a burst level up by 3, which is also very good because it's going to increase the max amount of damage bonus and healing bonus that you can get. And then you have C4, which is basically an energy helping constellation. What this does is it effectively lowers the energy recharge requirements of Furina because you're going to have Mrs. Krabs, Dante, or Usher hitting the opponents and giving her extra energy. Now, the energy isn't going to be an insane difference, but we're looking at maybe an extra 16 energy every rotation, which should save you some ER, which will help you increase her other stats by making it so you're not locked into specific stats and specific ER thresholds. So it is very good. Oh, and also it makes it so you can gain energy on her healing spec, but you're probably still not going to use that unless you want to C4 her specifically so she can be a team healer. But like, why would you do that? I don't know. I don't get it personally. C5 is going to be an increase to her skill, which is a lot more damage, which is fantastic. And then C6 is like, Jesus Christ. Basically, she gets Hydro Infusion whenever you use her elemental skill, and the Hydro Infusion lasts 10 seconds. It also increases its damage based on a portion of Furina's max HP, which is super nice, and allows you to use her as an on-field Hydro driver if you wish to. But not only that, you also have the ability to get even more bonuses off of her because whenever you use her normal attacks, charging attacks, or plunging attacks will have special abilities tied to them based on if you're an Oja or Numa. In Oja state, you're basically getting passive healing off of Furina, and the more you use her attacks, the longer you're going to be getting that healing. It's going to last 2.9 seconds, kind of a weird time for them to make that last. But if you trigger the effect again, it extends the duration, which basically allows you to passively heal your team with Furina on field, which is basically like having both her Oja and Numa elemental skill active at the same time, because you're basically getting a passive party heal, which is super nice. It also helps you build fanfare stacks faster because party healing is so strong. But if you also use her in her Numa state, it massively increases her damage that she deals with normal charge attack and plunging attacks. And when you hit enemies, it will consume stacks of HP from the party. Now, the downside of this one is that when you're in Numa, you're actually using your healing pet, so you're not going to be getting damage from her other 3 summons. So whether or not this is actually a damage increase over the other one is hard to say, but I know that for a fact you can run her as like a main DPS on fielder. So C6 does effectively open up like an entirely new playstyle for Furina, which is super awesome. Granted, it's going to cost you like $2,000, so I don't necessarily recommend it, but for those of you who are planning on C6ing this character, this is a pretty cool effect. In terms of constellation value, literally all of these constellations are good. I would say the worst one is either C5 or C3, because even C4 is still a huge energy jump for her and effectively removes you from ER jail. But if you're a low spender, I suggest going for C1 or C2 and stopping. Again, I really can't recommend you pull on this weapon banner because it's a fucking scam. You have a 50% chance after the 75-25 of literally just not getting a weapon. Like, you would just get weapon XP. Personally, I would say the stopping point is C1 or C2. C1 is a pretty good stopping point, but C2 will make C1 even better. So I'll let you do with that information what you want to do. I just paid off all my student loans and got married, so I don't have money to spend on anything right now. But that's also fine too, because C0 Furina is actually still one of the best characters in the entire game. In terms of constellations versus her weapon, definitely go for constellations before you try to pull for that trap banner that I cannot like, seriously, don't pull on it. It's so bad. When Raiden released, she solved energy problems for quite a few characters. When Dendro and Nahida released, we had an entirely new set of meta teams based on Dendro and Nahida's strength as a support. And now we have Furina, a character that not only counters all of Fontaine's forced team mechanics, but also improves on old teams and enables tons of new teams. This character is honestly incredible, and for new players and returning players, this is going to be one of the best characters to pull on for Genshin's entire lifespan, unless there's some sort of mechanic that makes Hydro bad or they just power creep the game, which hasn't really happened a ton since launch, so I'm not too worried about it. If you guys enjoyed, let me know down in the comments and by liking the video and subscribing, and I'm gonna go take a nap. Bye!